and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Mike Tellerino, CEO of K9 for Veterans. I'm here tonight with Margaret O'Connor and also Jillian Jans, who's going to be co-hosting with us on different evenings. Margaret is the counsel for the Chicago Skyway Company. This organization recently donated to sponsor a service dog for one of our veterans, which was an amazing thing that they did for us. Margaret, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about you and your organization?
Well, my name's Margaret O'Connor. I'm an attorney now. I was in the Navy for a while, so I'm a veteran as well. I don't know, you want to know about my attorney career?
Tell us a little bit about your military background.
and stuff, or was it?
No, I was a surface warfare officer.
Okay.
I'm from Chicago area. I grew up in the suburbs, and I had looked into ways to pay for college and found out about these scholarships through the military. And I didn't really have a lot of knowledge about military life. I had a couple uncles who were in the Air Force and the Marines, but nothing they talked about much.
So it was a few good men, wasn't it?
No, that didn't come. I'm too old for that. It was Top Gun. But there was a Navy air station right near my house, and I lived in Park Ridge, and Glenview used to have a naval air station, so I went there and talked to some folks and applied for this scholarship. And then in college, after I graduated, I was commissioned an officer and was in the military in the Navy for 4 years active duty and then some reserve time. So I was a service
So
warfare
you
officer.
understand veterans and the background with being
Military
a veteran and
life.
military, how important it is.
Yeah, it was a really, I always say, good life experience. You know, it's very different from sort of, I don't know, my life growing up. So it was sort of an adjustment to get into the military and then an adjustment coming out. So
How did you hear about K9s? I'm interested in that myself. How did you hear about us?
well, I work right now for a company called Skyway Concession Company. It's the company that operates and maintains the Chicago Skyway, the toll road that's in the area. And the city of Chicago still owns the property, but we do all the maintenance work and run the operations of it. And anyway, every year, I've worked there for a couple of years now, and they do charitable giving sort of annually or throughout the year, depending on what's going on. And our main areas that they already had picked before I was there were military and veteran organizations, and we also reach out to our local communities. We're in the middle of 4 wards that surround the Skyway on the 7th, 8th, 10th, and 20th wards. So we work with the local aldermen to find what needs some of the local schools have, mostly, I think schools community-based organizations, but schools in particular, public schools, because they always seem to have a need, and we want to reach out and support those
It's like
kids.
the youth of the community and like the
aldermen help us, identify sort of the schools with more need, and then target specific.
So then how'd you come about
things.
finding
Our
K9?
K9s. So we work with a community outreach public relations person as well, and on the veteran side, she usually puts a list together, and I mean, frankly, I'm aware of some of them too, and so then a couple of my coworkers and our CEO and I go through the list and talk about what we want to do that year,
Right.
and what specific project or service or product can we fund that would make sense. So K9s was the one that we came up with this year.
I was surprised when I got your call. I went, really?
Yeah.
How nice.
How did you guys? You have the list that has the different organizations. What was the thing that piqued your interest the most about K9s? That was.
Well, I mean, post-traumatic stress. People hear about it. I personally have some experience with, past relationship. Another veteran who had post-traumatic stress, and I have other people in my life, and been through some trauma myself that's not service related, but so I recognize that it's an issue, and one that doesn't, I think, get enough attention, and people are very quiet about it or don't want to talk about it who have it, and you want to make sure that I think services are available and that people are aware of them, so that if they find themselves able to ask for help and they want to, that they know what's out there to
Right.
to get where
To
they
know
can
who
get
to
that
ask
help.
help from and what to
Yeah, how to find it.
seek the.
And this in particular, I mean, I thought was great that you take shelter dogs and train them. So
That's-
it's sort of the
Yeah.
combination
You know what?
of
And I-
helping veterans and post-traumatic
And
stress,
I
but then
think-
also working with the shelter
I
dogs.
think that, to me, we're saving a dog
Mm-hmm.
and giving it to a veteran, and hopefully making that connection between the two.
Yeah.
That it's a lifetime bond between these two. So it's really a great process to see these two bond together,
Yeah.
and the difference that it makes in their lives and stuff.
I sometimes feel like when you do the most good in the most areas possible when it comes to these kind of organizations and whatnot, especially with the ones that we have, and him taking the service dog and putting it with the veteran, and then the shelter animal is just 3 different good ways to
Yeah.
put things together, and then it kind of whirlwinds into even better. So that's great that you're able to.
Yeah. And you get that message out to more communities, so people maybe who are more
Absolutely.
focused on animals then become aware of post-traumatic
Exactly.
stress,
Exactly.
and vice versa.
Exactly. And Jillian herself, her husband John, has a service dog.
Yes.
And she could tell you firsthand the difference that it made in John's life.
Absolutely. He had her from the time that we were 22. Somebody was going to put her down that I worked with, and she was 9 months old. And I'm a dog person, so I brought her home, and she said that the landlord actually said we couldn't keep her. And I had just read about Puppies Behind Bars, which was the first organization that kind of did something like what all of them are doing now. But John went and got Allie trained privately, and she was about a year working, but I mean, he was off of different medications that he had been
Sure.
on from getting out. He'd been able to go in public. He became a different person because of that dog.
Yeah.
And, it was just a slight chance that I had said, hey, let's not put that dog down because that's
Right.
not cool.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so,
If you were to choose an organization, veteran, animal, what determines that? How do you?
I mean, really, it's a consensus. We all talk about it, and it's more, the mission. Like, for example, for yours, it's the shelter dogs and training those, helping get awareness out there and supporting veterans. I liked your whole support group. You were talking about how the veterans then also have a community amongst each other and can
Yeah,
talk, and
they-
it sort of pulls
the
in all these
awareness
different
that
things.
everything's
Yeah.
we're trying to raise and everything
Yeah,
that goes along with.
and that you fund their medical care and food, so it's not a burden on the veteran, and so it's those kinds of factors. And same with other groups. We I think last year I know we gave to the YMCA has a Urban Warriors program. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes.
But they partner veterans with youth that are. Have experienced trauma in the community, and you can imagine in Chicago there's some communities that have, where these kids are
Been
really
touched by it
witnessing.
a lot more, yeah.
So that was, I thought, wonderful because it helps the veteran talk about their own trauma,
Right.
but in service to someone else. And I feel like that's another way that people are. It's easier to get help if you're helping somebody
That's
than
a
the
lot
other.
of what it is. And
So-
the doctors that I've talked to about PTSD have a very different way of thinking about it with like your neural connections and all that kind of stuff. And when you're talking to a kid about something that isn't related to your service experience necessarily, and then it just kind of sparks that connection without you realizing it, and you're dealing with the trauma without even knowing it. And
Right.
it happens with the service dogs too. That was what a big
Right.
thing is
Right.
with having them, is you get asked all the time, well, what's the dog for? Like, you're not blind, it's
Right,
kind of a common thing, but at the same
Right.
time, if you want to look at the plus side, it's they get to talk about what the dog is helping them with, and then that's their service experience. That's getting adjusted to talking about it, and people are getting adjusted to hearing about it.
Yeah, that's true.
What about your transition from your military career to civilian life? Was there a transition period for you that was, difficult, or was it a smooth transition?
I found it to be challenging. When I was in the Navy, I mean, you're living I was on ship, so I was living on the ship. Most of the time we were out at sea or doing exercises, or we did a deployment. And that lifestyle is very different from you know, I remember coming back from deployment at Christmas time. We came back just in time. Everybody was happy about that.
Yeah.
But it was so shocking culturally to be
my
like
goodness.
out in the middle of
Adjusting
nowhere.
to all that.
You know, where you're just working and in the same uniform and you're seeing the same thing and, you know, eating terrible food. Sorry. Sorry, but it was terrible.
Yeah, it was.
Ate a lot of oatmeal
My
this
husband's
year.
still eating them. Already at home right now.
Yeah.
But then coming back and then, you know, you're trying to run an errand and you're just, you know, Christmas is everywhere and the
Overwhelmed.
sensory you know, you get overwhelmed a little bit that way. And I mean,
Right.
I wasn't in a wartime situation. I was in during sort of between the two Gulf Wars. We were just
Right.
doing
But
sanctions
post-deployment
support.
stress is a common thing that is underlooked or under, you know,
True. Yeah.
it's something that you guys go through that, you know, it was brought out in the movie The American Sniper that people, you know, saw, but it was then developed into PTSD. There's lots of people who, I'm assuming like yourself, that, you know, when you got back, it was a culture shock because people had no idea that all of this was going on for
Right.
you, and you're not going to say anything, but it's
No, and you
it's
feel like you're
there.
complaining on the
Right,
wall
like,
and whatever.
and
You know,
you're-
like it's not that bad. It's just strange.
Your work and your everyday life was like so structured, and you have orders coming down, and then it's like, wait, I'm done for a minute. What?
Yeah.
But-
And then everything
the
else.
community just doesn't understand what your daily life is like, and they'll be like, "Oh, so how was this?" But you can't answer it in a short, succinct,
Concise, yeah.
statement.
Yeah.
It's just you
You
have
know-
to experience it to really understand it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to really.
I think for most of our guys that, you know, that I've spoke with and that are in our program, you know, they just have that lack of that battle buddy thing, that is structure in their
Yeah.
life. They come
Yeah.
home and there's none of that. They
Yeah.
really don't know what to do with themselves
Yeah.
anymore. And they had somebody that was always taking care of them and watching over them and
Yeah.
Or they
being
had
their
somebody to
battle
take care
buddy.
of.
Exactly.
And
It was great.
camaraderie.
And that's where these service dogs that come into play with our veterans, because they become their
Absolutely.
best friend, their battle buddy.
Right.
They could talk to that dog about anything they want to talk about. The dog's never going to judge them.
John slept
It's-
through the night for the first time with Allie because
Yeah, it's an unconditional love.
Yeah.
for the first time he didn't have to be aware of everything all the time. He felt safe knowing that she was, I mean, just naturally a dog that's going
Well-
to hear, you know, it was,
That's why a lot of guys go through sleep deprivation, because
Absolutely.
they don't want to have that night terror. But knowing that they have that service dog with them, they know that if they do go to that place,
The
that
dog's
that
there to
dog's
bring 'em
going to
back.
wake them up, and they're not going to have to spend any time there.
well, and on top of it, hypervigilance and all of that, like you're
Exactly.
so nervous and acutely aware of your surroundings that
Sure.
you're trained to do something that you're not able to use in your civilian life for a
Right.
way that is
Right.
contextually understood by you. So that dog is just taking care of it for you without you having to put too much thought into it. And it's a
Tell us-
wonderful thing.
Tell us some more about Chicago Skyway. I mean, when you called and we spoke and you said that you were interested in, you know, sponsoring one of our service dogs for one of our veterans and stuff, and then you came out to the training center, was it what you expected?
No, I mean, I didn't really know what to expect. You know, I didn't know how big the organization was, but you know, it was really nice that we were able to go on a day where there was training happening, and we got to meet a couple of the veterans
Right.
that were working with their dogs, and I don't know, I thought it was just really nice that they included us and were open to talking to us a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't what I don't know that I had an expectation.
Expectations from it. You know, it's like I said, again, it's amazing when there's organizations out there like Chicago Skyway, for your organization and other organizations like yourself to step up to the plate to say, hey, you know what? We want to do something to help our veterans. My God, there should be more organizations like Chicago Skyway to step up and do that.
And make the
for a
connection
veteran.
between your
Yeah.
community and the veteran community
mean-
and
Yeah.
this pathway that's now being created, because how many people are going
Right.
to benefit from knowing that they exist and
Right.
are out there and can help people when they need that.
Well,
You know-
I hope that I mean, I guess our hope is that you know, we just keep bringing awareness. We try to put out a press release about it, but I know when I first got to the Skyway, I didn't realize that there were other veterans that worked there until I started, you know, meeting people and talking to them, and I found
It's a
out
hidden
there's actually
community,
a
let me
number of
tell you.
them, and people don't always talk about it. You know,
Right.
you might have it on your resume, but once you're past
Right.
HR, nobody mentions it. You know, so but we have someone who's a Marine and who was twice deployed to Afghanistan. We had a maintenance supervisor who recently retired, but was a Vietnam vet.
Right.
And I mean, the minute we first spoke, he goes, "I heard you were a veteran."
Yes.
And then he started telling me about his post-traumatic stress. He's like, "I've never talked about this before, and I just started seeing somebody at the VA." And I was like, "That's so amazing. That's courageous. I'm
appreciate
so
it in a
glad."
way that he
yeah.
wouldn't-
And I think there's a natural bond when you find
Absolutely.
somebody who,
Right.
even if it's a different service, a different era,
You know,
whatever.
Absolutely.
What's nice about when you sponsor a service dog with K9, you get to follow the progress of that veteran and the service dog.
And they keep you included in it.
Yeah, I mean, you're part of it. You just don't. Here's a check. Thank you for letting us sponsor a service dog. No, we want you to be a continuous part of that dog's
Yeah.
and that veteran's process through.
And the journey that they make,
Oh
because
my God,
it's something
yeah.
that once you see it and are a part of
Right.
it like that, you
It's
take
truly
it
an
with you and
amazing
it makes
journey.
a
It really
very
is.
big difference.
Yeah,
No,
it really is.
we're very excited about it, and I think our employees will be excited, and not even just the veterans, but we have other employees who have family members who are in the military. So one of our finance employees, her brother deployed last year with the Marines, and we just did on the Skyway a new like a grand reopening. We did some upgrades to the plaza. And so we invited the local schools because we like to include them
Right.
in our thing.
Right.
So we had like the marching band from one of the schools, and the ROTC unit came out, and
Oh.
their
Was that
color
exciting for you?
guard.
Is
And
that-
yeah, it was so nice to see
Yeah.
them, and so maybe they're more engaged, and maybe they're seeing this, and they might be interested.
It's wonderful when you see those connections
There's all
just
these
kind of
Come together.
Yeah,
It really is.
Cross-pollinate, that was a great one.
And again, seeing the process for a sponsor to see what that dog and that veteran go through.
And how they grow.
Yeah, I mean, the difference that these dogs make, and I can't even stress that enough, the difference that these dogs make in our veterans' lives with PTSD, it's the transformation is amazing. It really is.
No, I'm
And
sure.
That's what we want to help, I think, as part of like the people who aren't in the military being able to understand that without having necessarily the bond that they have
Right.
with having experienced the military end, but still seeing that
Sure.
growth and significance that comes from it, and then trying to understand what it all comes from. And then the experience gets understood, their service gets acknowledged a little bit more understandably, and
Sure.
it's dealt with a lot better.
As far as the Chicago Skyway, I'm sure you sponsor other organizations and make donations to. Would you care to mention any of those?
Well, I mentioned earlier Urban Warriors. That was I thought, just a wonderful program. And I know they do, that's through the YMCA, and they have another, Story Squad, I think, is another program they have where the young adults, and I'm not sure if they have the veterans do it too, but at least the young adults can share their trauma
Right.
and help them work through it, and it's a way to express it, and I think that's a great program. We sponsored the USO of Illinois 2 years ago, and that's not for veterans, but it services active and reservists.
They
and-
welcome us in every time we go to USO and we're flying. so that's-
They do some amazing
great.
And
things.
they do some really
do.
nice programs, and so I actually have volunteered personally with them as well. Just I thought that was very rewarding, and I enjoyed it.
You could let the Chicago Skyway employees know that if they'd like to volunteer at K9, we're always accepting volunteers. They could help train with the service dogs at the training center.
Oh,
They
really?
could help
That's
us at
great.
our events.
Okay.
And what's good about it is that when the volunteers come in, they actually work with one of our service dogs
Oh,
in the
that's really
training
great.
process. So
I'll
it's
put that word out for
yeah,
sure.
it's really good. So we're always looking for volunteers to come in and help at the center, to help us at events.
Right.
That's very good for us. It helps
that'd
us
be
a
great.
lot.
And I
quite
have
a
to say
bit.
the K9 for Veterans events are some of the biggest that I've seen as far as turnout goes. Because I've been a VFW auxiliary president for years, and we never get that kind of turnout at things.
It's such an emotional night, though.
Well, even without the dogs,
Yeah.
the Tinley VFW that you've done a few events at, or Gaelic Park, they're huge events that are just so the mood of the room is patriotic and appreciative, and it's wonderful.
And that's what we want. We want it to be a family night. We want you to bring the kids. I want
I
the
do.
kids to see. Yeah, I want the kids to see. What we're doing to honor our veterans. We want them to learn by example.
And be proud of what
What our
going
veterans
on
are
and-
doing and how we're supporting them, and this when we do a dedication, that's something that these veterans should have received when they came home. That's why we make that night specifically and only about the veterans. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not about anything else but about them and giving them special recognition for what they sacrificed for us and stuff. So we try to make it a really eventful night for these guys and stuff. And
Absolutely. I think
have-
it's been phenomenal so far.
yeah, it really, and it means a lot to them. It truly does. I mean, they didn't get that when they came home.
Yeah.
So now they're getting some recognition that they should have got before and stuff.
And so many of these guys come back with they call them the walking wounded or the invisible injuries, and that was something that, like, without at work mentioning that you're a veteran, like, you don't know that kind of thing, and it's something that they deserve, but they're never going to ask for because they're humble and they're good people
Right.
and they don't.
It's someone you can't see.
Right, but
you
they
know.
deserve it, and a dog is a great way to start out their new journey with a awareness of who they are and not being
Right.
trying to hide it, but a part of.
John, when he was on last week, made a really valid point. When you get a service dog, it's like you're walking around with a neon sign, hey, look at me, I've got PTSD.
Yeah.
Yep.
And nobody really wants to do that.
Sure.
We got kicked out
Nobody-
of so many places.
Yeah, nobody,
I can't believe it.
Yeah,
That's
nobody
terrible.
wants to really walk around with a neon sign, hey,
Yeah.
there's something wrong with me.
We got
Yeah.
kicked out of the VA. That was fantastic.
With the service dog,
Oh my.
most veterans don't want to walk into a crowded room. But when they
Sure.
walk in with a service dog,
Sure.
they feel like all that attention isn't on them anymore. It's on the dog.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they'll engage in conversations that they typically wouldn't. They would have avoided conversations with other people.
They would have avoided people in general.
But
like-
now people are going to come up to them and say, "Oh, what's your dog's name? How old's your dog? Can I
Right.
pet your dog?" No. No. But they're going to ask all kinds, and it's going to force that veteran to engage in a conversation that he typically wouldn't. He would have avoided at all
Right.
costs.
And that's
but
one of
now it's red.
biggest struggles with PTSD is avoidance of things, and it's something that then just makes it kind of just.
It's more isolated.
Grow and be worse.
Yeah,
it
it's
makes it
more
more about the
isolated.
dog and not them. They don't feel like everybody's staring at them.
And there are people who would like to do things in service of other
Mm-hmm.
things, and it's something that, especially with a dog, it's a wonderful way to make that kind of relationship that's understandable to civilian people because
Right.
you like dogs.
Yeah, right.
And
It's
at the
a
same
whole
time,
Who
it's-
doesn't like dogs and veterans? I mean,
Absolutely.
if you don't like one, you gotta like the other,
Exactly.
right? So we
Give us
we
a
got
little
both our bases covered. But again, let me get
Yeah.
back to Chicago Skyway.
Okay.
Chicago Skyway, to me, to sponsor a veteran and a service dog, what greater respect can you pay our military veterans than
Thank you.
honoring them that way?
Thank you.
Truly, it was a gift,
Yeah.
totally unexpected, welcomed beyond words.
Well, no, we're really happy to do it, honestly. It's something that we just feel strongly
Yeah.
about, and we're excited. Actually, that's a pitch I wanted to make before the end, was that we have some open positions. We always look for good people. Personally, I'm biased towards veterans, but I don't
Really?
know. I'm
I
in
would've never-
HR, so
I would've never- I
don't
would've
have a
never
lot of say.
guessed.
But
you guys are aware of the great skill set that they bring to the job for us, is what.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
in my experience, they're people who are problem solvers and are dedicated and team players and
Self-starters.
all of the good things.
You know what the training went into it, so that's
Yeah, yeah, and those are the kind of people we want. So
If our audience has anybody out there that's looking for a job, where would they go? Who would they call? What would they do?
So you could go to our website, which is www.chicagoskyway.org. So not a .com, it's a .org. And there's a job postings, and I think we have three openings right now. One is for a mechanic, an equipment mechanic, and then two for our I forget what the title is, but basically roadway maintenance team. So you need a commercial driver's license and some experience, but the job postings will be up there. So if you just go to the website, and then there's
They can get all that
email where
information.
you can just email HR and submit your application that way, or if you have questions, you can ask them.
Awesome, that's great.
So yeah,
That's
just
great
go to the
to-
website.
That's wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
You
I'd
know,
love to have it. So
bring it on.
Right.
Get those applications.
need more veterans out there.
Anything you'd like to add before we close? And first of all, let me thank you, and let me thank Chicago Skyway. I can't tell you what your donation meant
No,
to
thank
us
you. Thank
and
you
our
for
veteran.
doing this.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's something that our veteran, who you're going to meet next
Wait.
week.
You won't tell me anything
Okay.
about it.
No, I won't tell you anything. It's going to be a surprise.
yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead. What- if-
No, I was just
anything
gonna say, we
closing?
very much appreciate what you are doing and the hard work you're putting into it. And we appreciate all the veterans who are, reaching out and accepting help, and for those who are servicing others and helping others.
That's the
It's
hardest
very
thing for
important.
our veterans to do is to admit that they need help.
And advocate for themselves.
But everybody
Yeah,
needs help.
exactly.
Everybody needs
Everybody
it.
does. And I said, I think the hardest thing for any veteran to do is admit that he needs help.
Yeah.
And the first step in helping themselves is admitting that you do need help.
Yeah.
And then reaching out to some place that you know is going to actually help you is the second
Right.
step, and that's what a wonderful organization like K9s is for.
Yeah, no, we're happy to support
Well,
great
thank you.
organizations like this.
I really appreciate it.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.